They came as judges, not invaders. Their ships, black as the void between stars, descended without a sound. The sky wept fire where they passed, and the world trembled under the weight of their purpose. The HFY executioners of the cosmos had arrived. Their mission was clear: eradicate humanity. A sentence passed by unseen alien overlords who had deemed Earth a disease in the great celestial order. Every world they had judged before fell in ours. No war, no negotiation, only extinction. But something changed when they set foot on our soil. As they marched through ruined streets, something stirred in the shadows. A presence older than mankind itself. A figure in tattered robes, wielding a scythe forged in the black heart of dying stars. Death had come, not for humanity but for them. The HFY executioners of worlds would soon learn what it meant to stand before the true master of the end. Chapter 1. The sky cracks open. The sky bled fire. It started as a ripple in the atmosphere, an unnatural shimmer high above the earth. The world noticed it in fragments. First, a handful of astronomers who whispered of strange distortions in the upper layers of the atmosphere. Then, a few scattered conspiracy theorists who saw patterns in the anomalies and called it an omen. But by the time the mainstream news finally caught up, it was too late. The first of the alien warships tore through the sky like a god's wrath made manifest. Over New York City, a massive rift split the heavens, crackling with an eerie violet energy. The air shuddered. A monstrous shape loomed beyond the rupture, a ship unlike anything mankind had ever known. It was a floating behemoth of jagged black metal, pulsing with a sickly crimson glow. Then came the others, descending like heralds of doom over cities across the globe: London, Beijing, Moscow, Rio de Janeiro. The invasion was simultaneous, coordinated, and merciless. The alien executioners had arrived. They did not speak. They did not negotiate. They simply began the slaughter. From the ships came massive humanoid beings, each clad in obsidian armor, their elongated skulls adorned with jagged crests. Their weapons, sleek and humming with dark energy, vaporized all in their path. Human soldiers, brave but woefully unprepared, were cut down within seconds. Tanks melted into slag. Fighter jets were plucked from the sky like insects. Within the first hour, millions were dead. But in the depths of the chaos, in a city that had become a graveyard of burning wreckage, something stirred. Something old. Something forgotten. And death itself answered the call. Chapter 2. The Reaper walks again. The executioners had not expected resistance. Not true resistance, not after their overwhelming display of force. The races they had culled before had all succumbed swiftly, as all mortal creatures must before the inevitable march of oblivion. Yet as they advanced through the ruins of New York, something changed. A chill spread through the air, unnatural and piercing. It was not the creeping cold of space or the manufactured terror of their dominion. No, this was something else. Something ancient, something that made even their unreadable, expressionless visages falter. A figure stepped from the shadows. He wore black, not the deep obsidian of their armor, but a shade darker still, the color of absolute nothingness. His cloak billowed as if caught in an unseen wind, and his presence was an open wound upon reality. Where he walked, the air seemed to wither as if existence itself recoiled from him. His face was obscured beneath a hood, but in the void where his eyes should have been, there was something worse than emptiness. There was inevitability. The first executioner, a towering figure nearly 10 feet in height, turned its weapon upon the newcomer. A beam of annihilation, capable of reducing steel to vapor, lanced forward. The figure did not move. The energy hit him. And disappeared. For the first time in their long history, the executioners knew fear. "You have come to take life," the figure spoke, his voice a whisper that thundered through the ruins. "But death is mine to give." He raised a single hand, and the first executioner crumpled, its armor rotting away as if centuries had passed in an instant. Its body followed, flesh peeling back, bones turning brittle before collapsing into dust. The others hesitated. It was only a moment. But a moment was all he needed. The Reaper had returned. And Earth was his domain. Chapter 3. The Judgment begins. The first executions were swift. The alien executioners, towering beings clad in obsidian armor that seemed to absorb the very light around them, descended upon the city of New Ravenna. Their hollowed eyes burned with an ethereal glow, their judgment unquestionable. Humanity had been weighed, and for many the sentence was death. Dr. Alara Vaughn watched from the shattered remnants of her university office. A leading expert in extraterrestrial anthropology, she had spent her life hoping for first contact. But not like this. Not with creatures that carried out death sentences like divine enforcers. She had seen them sever a man's existence with a mere gesture. His body collapsing into dust as if erased from history. The world had descended into panic. Governments collapsed overnight, their military might useless against entities that seemed beyond the reach of human weaponry. Resistance was futile, and any attempt to stand against the executioners ended in oblivion. But amidst the chaos, Alara had uncovered something chilling. The executioners were not random in their judgments. Their targets were selected with terrifying precision. Certain individuals, leaders, criminals, seemingly innocent civilians were marked. The criteria remained unknown. But the pattern was undeniable. In the chaos, she joined a small resistance group, led by Colonel Marcus Halloway, a decorated soldier whose platoon had been annihilated in an instant. His goal was not to fight back, not yet. First, they needed to understand why some lived while others perished. Their chance came when an executioner, wounded from an unexplained force, was found lying in a collapsed cathedral. The thing still breathed, its blackened exoskeleton cracked. It was vulnerable. It was their first, and possibly last, opportunity to understand their enemy. Chapter 4. Death's Bargain. The executioner's voice was a whisper from the abyss. As Alara approached, she felt her mind scrape against something vast and incomprehensible. The executioner's eyes flared as if recognizing her. "You wish to know the weight of your sins," it intoned. Alara hesitated. The others watched anxiously. The air was thick with tension, fear palpable. "Why are you doing this?" she demanded. "Why judge us? Who gave you the right?" The executioner's broken body trembled, its form barely holding together. "We do not judge. We execute. The judgment was made long before your world was born." Marcus stepped forward. "By who?" The executioner regarded him for a moment before uttering a name. A name that burned itself into their minds like a brand. A name that had no translation in any known language, but carried a weight so heavy Alara felt her knees buckle. And then the executioner did something unexpected. It laughed. A hollow, agonizing sound. "There is another," it said, turning its burning gaze toward Alara. "One who calls itself death." Alara felt something within her shift, as if unseen threads of fate had suddenly twisted. "Death itself?" The executioner gave a slow nod. "It has answered your world's call. And it does not abide by our laws." Suddenly the cathedral trembled. A presence loomed beyond the shattered stained glass. Shadows twisted, forming something massive, something ancient. The executioner gasped in what could only be terror. For the first time they saw fear in an executioner's eyes. Something far worse had come to earth. Chapter 5. The Judgment of the Executioners. The alien executioners stood tall in the wreckage of Washington, D.C., their biomechanical forms shimmering under the crimson glow of their spacecraft. Their leader, Vothare, extended a clawed appendage and gestured toward the gathered remains of humanity's leadership. The world watched in horror through scattered news broadcasts and hacked satellite feeds as the tribunal of the otherworldly beings commenced. "Humanity," Vothare's voice echoed telepathically into the minds of those present. "Your sins have reached the farthest corners of the cosmos. Your time of reckoning has come." President Harris, bruised and exhausted, took a staggering step forward. We are a flawed species, but we strive to be better. You cannot judge all of us based on the crimes of a few." Vothare tilted its head, its eye clusters analyzing her. "Your kind's destruction is not of choice but of necessity. We are the balance keepers, and your existence has tipped the scales too far." A great obelisk of unknown material materialized in the heart of the ruined city. A machine of judgment, pulsating with energy, connected to the alien hive mind. The executioners began their grim assessment, scanning every human within reach. Those deemed irredeemable, war criminals, tyrants, mass murderers, were lifted into the air by invisible force and disintegrated into dust. But then something unexpected happened. A dark rift tore through the sky, a coldness spreading through the air that even the alien executioners hesitated to face. A figure draped in shadows, neither fully alive nor dead, stepped forward. Death itself had answered the call. Chapter 6. When Death Spoke. The embodiment of death stood motionless before the alien executioners. It had no defined face, only an abyss where eyes should have been. Its voice was neither male nor female, but a whisper carried on the winds of eternity. You come to pass judgment on humanity, but your authority is not absolute. The executioners faltered. For the first time since arriving, uncertainty seeped into their collective mind. Your kind eradicates civilizations in the name of balance, Death continued. But I have seen what follows your purge. You claim to restore equilibrium, yet you leave nothing but silence and sorrow. Vathare stiffened. We are the arbiters of cosmic justice. This species has proven itself unworthy of continuation. Then why do I still walk among them? Death asked. Why do I still harvest their souls if their time was meant to end? If your judgment were just, my role would be redundant. But I am here. And I am never without purpose. A chilling silence stretched between them. The executioners, for all their power, could not deny the presence of death, a force beyond even their comprehension. The humans, still trembling from the devastation, felt a strange sense of hope in the entity's defense. Vathare's mind raced. Could they truly overstep? The cosmos had laws, but they had never before been challenged by something so fundamental, so inevitable. Death raised a bony hand. You will leave. You will not return. The judgment you seek is not yours to give. The obelisk of judgment flickered. The energy pulsing within it dimmed as the executioners reeled from the presence of something far older than them. They had razed worlds, annihilated civilizations, but they had never stood against death itself. One by one their towering figures stepped backward. Their ships, once a symbol of unstoppable wrath, lifted off the ground, vanishing into the void of space. Humanity had been spared. Death turned toward the remaining humans, its empty gaze settling upon them. Do not waste this mercy, it whispered. And then just as suddenly as it had arrived, it was gone. The world remained in silence, forever changed by the day the executioners came, and the day death itself intervened. Chapter 7. The Dark Tribunal. The sky cracked with eerie violet lightning as the alien executioners stood in formation, their obsidian armor reflecting the deathly glow of their warships. The earth trembled beneath their boots, the sheer weight of their presence sending tremors across the land. Humanity had thought itself the master of its own fate, but tonight judgment had come. General Elias Carter stood on the makeshift War Council platform, his face set in a grim mask. The United Global Defense had done everything in its power to resist the invaders, but their weapons were useless against the alien enforcers. These beings were not conquerors, nor were they invaders seeking resources or land. They were executioners, sent from the void to punish worlds that had fallen into cosmic disfavor. A shadow moved at the far end of the ruined city square. A figure clad in dark robes, face hidden beneath a hood, stepped forward. The air around him distorted as if space itself recoiled from his presence. He was known by many names throughout history: Thanatos, Anubis, the Pale Rider, but now he had answered the call of Earth's reckoning. Death himself. Carter whispered, his fingers tightening around the hilt of his service knife. He had no illusions that such a weapon would save him, but in the face of the inevitable, defiance was all that remained. The leader of the executioners, an entity named Zelzoreth, spoke in a guttural, echoing voice. Your world has been judged. The decree has been made. You have but one hope, to make your case before the Dark Tribunal. Carter clenched his jaw. And what exactly do we plead for? Mercy? Existence? The hooded figure of death tilted his head slightly. And if I intervene? Zelzoreth's many eyes blinked in unison, analyzing the force before him. Then you will be judged as well. The air grew colder. A silence deeper than the void stretched across the battlefield. For the first time in eons, the very concept of mortality challenged the cosmic executioners. The trial of Earth would not be so simple after all. Chapter 8. The Sentence of Souls. The chamber of the Dark Tribunal was not built. It had always been. A void within the fabric of the universe, where the fates of civilizations were decided by entities beyond mortal comprehension. Carter, Death, and the executioners stood in the center of an endless abyss, before a colossal ethereal throne where three spectral judges loomed. The tribunal regarded the gathering with an impassive gaze, their forms shifting between humanoid and something indescribable. Their voices rang like the grinding of celestial bodies. Earth has fallen into chaos. Or pollution. Greed. The balance has been disturbed. We have watched and now we deliver judgment. Death's hollow voice cut through the abyss. You assume balance is broken. But what if Earth is merely in transition? To destroy it now may be premature. Zelzorath stepped forward. This world has long since passed its right to evolve. People destroy more than they create. The law is clear. The sentence is extinction. Carter gritted his teeth. You think you have the right to erase an entire species? What makes you so certain we are beyond redemption? The tribunal turned their gaze upon him. The evidence condemns you. Prove otherwise. Death extended a skeletal hand. There is a way. A trial by ordeal. The judges shifted in their thrones. Such a challenge has not been issued in millennia. Do you understand the risks? I do, Death answered. And so does humanity. A rift split the void. A battlefield unlike any before it emerged. The fate of Earth would be decided in the crucible of cosmic judgment. The test had begun. Chapter 9. The Judgment Looms. The skies above Earth had never seemed so oppressive. The alien ships, enormous and hauntingly silent, hovered above major cities, their craft casting long shadows that swallowed entire blocks. The world held its breath. Kara had been at the United Nations headquarters when the announcement came through, a message in a language no one could understand. The aliens who had called themselves the Enforcers sent it, a declaration of their purpose on Earth. Their words, though indecipherable, carried a weight that humans felt in their bones, in their minds, and in their very souls. They had come to judge humanity, to execute what they believed was a righteous sentence. The first sign that something was wrong came at sunrise. Across the world, people awoke to the sight of the executioners descending. Their presence was not a mere alien invasion. It was an omen, something that seemed to transcend human comprehension. Kara stood on the balcony watching the city below as panic erupted. People screamed, shouted, ran, and gathered in masses, unsure of how to prepare for what was to come. She had been part of the diplomatic efforts trying to negotiate, to reason with them, but every attempt had failed. Then death itself came. It wasn't the way humans had imagined it, the stereotypical robed figure carrying a scythe. No. Death was far more insidious, far more personal. It manifested not as a figure, but as an overwhelming presence, a void, a silence that blanketed everything it touched. The humans could feel its cold fingers creeping into their very hearts, paralyzing them with fear and uncertainty. For those few who could still think clearly, the question lingered. Why were they being judged? What had humanity done that was so unforgivable? Was this inevitable? Kara's mind raced. The Enforcers were here, but there was something more to it. Something about the nature of their judgment. It wasn't simply about punishing the guilty. It was about something bigger, something that made death seem almost like an agent of the aliens, not a separate force. As the first execution was carried out in a distant city, Kara felt the tremor in the air. One person selected at random had been chosen. No one could stop it. The alien weapon was not a gun or a blade. It was a wave of energy that bent reality itself. The poor soul simply ceased to exist. There was no blood, no body, just an empty space where a person had once been. As the Enforcers spread across the globe, Kara tried to make sense of the chaos. But the more she learned, the more she realized. The Enforcers didn't just come to punish, they came to erase. Entire civilizations. Whole societies. The executioners were not just taking life, they were rewriting existence. Chapter 10. The Reckoning. The reckoning came at dusk. Humanity had fought back. They had rallied, armed with whatever weapons they could find, even as their cities crumbled around them. But it was useless. The Enforcers had been prepared for human resistance, and their technology far surpassed anything Earth had ever known. Kara, alongside a small group of survivors, had taken refuge in an underground facility. The world above was unrecognizable. Ruins, smoke, and the distant eerie hum of the alien ships were all that remained of the once thriving cities. "We can't win this," one of the survivors muttered, staring at the flickering screen that displayed an image of a destroyed city. They're too powerful. It's over. But Kara refused to believe it. There had to be a way. They had to find it. Then death came again, but this time it was different. It was not the oppressive void it had been before. This time it had a face. A figure appeared on the edge of their hiding place, a silhouette in the dim light. The being seemed to shimmer with the force of the void itself, but within its form was an unmistakable presence, ancient, powerful, and terrifying. The survivors stood frozen, staring at the figure. It wasn't a human, but it wasn't entirely alien either. It felt like something both of this world and beyond it. Its voice, when it spoke, reverberated through their minds, like an echo from another reality. "You are not alone," the being intoned. "The enforcers may seek to erase you, but they do not understand that death is not theirs to claim." Kara felt a strange surge of hope. This was death? The force that had haunted her thoughts for so long? The entity that had moved across the globe claiming lives with terrifying certainty? The figure stepped forward. "I am not your enemy," it said, its voice softer now. "But I cannot stop what is coming." "Only you can." Kara swallowed hard. "How? How can we stop them?" Death tilted its head as if considering the question. "You have seen what they do. You have seen their power. But even the enforcers cannot escape their own laws. If you are willing to sacrifice to let go of your old selves, then you may find a way. But be warned, the price will be steep." Kara glanced at the others. There was fear in their eyes, but also something else. Understanding. The time for survival alone was over. They had to fight. "Tell me what to do," she said, her voice steady despite the dread twisting in her gut. Death's eyes gleamed, and for the first time it smiled, if such a thing could be called a smile. "Then prepare. The reckoning has only just begun." Chapter 11. The Edge of Oblivion. The hum of the alien crafts filled the air, vibrating through the Earth's atmosphere with an unsettling resonance. In the sky above, the executioners descended from the void of space. Their ships, sleek and imposing, cast long shadows over the land. Their arrival was heralded not by fanfare, but by an eerie silence that spread over the planet like a dark omen. Elliot, an ordinary man thrust into extraordinary circumstances, stood with his back pressed against the cold concrete of an abandoned building. His heart hammered in his chest, matching the rhythm of the mechanical thrumming that accompanied the aliens' descent. He had witnessed their power firsthand, how they could wipe out entire populations with a mere thought. The Earth had never seen a threat like this, and now, in its most vulnerable state, it had become a battlefield. Elliot's mind raced, trying to piece together the scattered fragments of information he had gathered in the past few days. The executioners weren't just invaders. They were hunters sent by an ancient force. The rumors of death itself walking the earth were no longer myths. It was real. And it had come to claim its due. He glanced at the others gathered around him, his allies, his friends, the last remnants of humanity's resistance. "We can't fight them," he muttered, his voice hoarse. "We don't stand a chance against that kind of power." Nora, a scientist who had once believed in logic and reason, now gripped her weapon with a look of grim resolve. "We don't have to beat them, Elliot. We just have to survive. Find a way to outlast them." The sound of footsteps echoed in the distance, and Elliot tensed. The executioners were near. Each of them was a towering figure, their bodies cloaked in armor that seemed to absorb the light around them. Their eyes glowed like molten metal, and they exuded an air of absolute authority. Death itself had walked onto Earth in the form of these executioners, and Elliot could feel the weight of their presence. It was a feeling that crushed his spirit, gnawed at his very soul. The thought of running was tempting, but where could they go? "They're not just here to conquer," whispered Marcus, another member of the group, his voice low. "They're here for a reckoning. And we're the ones who called them." Elliot turned to Marcus, his brow furrowing in confusion. "What do you mean? How could we have called them?" "Remember the black hole?" Marcus said. "The one that appeared out of nowhere? It wasn't a natural phenomenon. It was a signal. And whoever or whatever they are, they heard it." The ground shook as one of the executioners landed with the force of a thunderstrike. Elliot's knees buckled, his body instinctively dropping to the ground, though he fought to stay upright. The air was thick with the presence of death itself, and the executioner loomed above them. It spoke, its voice a deep, resonant rumble that seemed to vibrate in their bones. "The time has come. You called for judgment." Elliot looked up, his eyes meeting the glowing eyes of the executioner. For a moment he saw the weight of countless ages within them, as if the creature before him had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations long before Earth had even formed. "No," Elliot gasped, shaking his head. "We didn't call you. We didn't ask for this." The executioner's gaze hardened. "Your existence is a violation of the natural order. You have proven yourselves unworthy." Before Elliot could speak again, the alien raised its hand. Time seemed to slow as the air around them shimmered, and then the world cracked open with a blinding light. Chapter 12. The Reckoning. The earth trembled beneath them as the light enveloped everything. For a moment, there was nothing but pure white energy, washing over them with the intensity of 1,000 suns. Elliot tried to scream, but his voice was lost in the roar of the explosion. His vision went dark as the light consumed all. When the light faded, Elliot found himself standing in a vast, empty void. The ground beneath him was no longer solid earth, but a floating platform suspended in an endless expanse of nothingness. He stumbled, disoriented, his mind struggling to grasp what had just happened. Nora was next to him, her face pale. "Where are we?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "We're somewhere else," Elliot muttered, his thoughts still hazy. "This isn't Earth." A voice echoed through the void, deep and ancient. "You are in the judgment chamber where all souls are weighed. You stand at the precipice of your final reckoning." Elliot spun around, his breath catching in his throat. The executioner stood before them, towering and unmoving. But this time it wasn't alone. Figures, cloaked in shadow, surrounded them, dark beings who radiated an aura of death and finality. "Are we dead?" Nora asked, her voice breaking. "No," the executioner replied. "But you will be soon enough. The question is, will you face judgment or will you beg for mercy?" Elliot took a step back, heart racing. This was it, the end. Humanity's reckoning was upon them. There was no escape, no hiding from the inevitable. But something stirred within him, a glimmer of defiance. "We're not all guilty," he said, his voice gaining strength. "We don't deserve to die." The executioner tilted its head, considering. "Perhaps," it said, "but you have chosen this path. Your fate was sealed when you summoned us." "But we didn't." Elliot shouted, anger rising. "We didn't ask for any of this. We didn't know what would happen. How could we have known?" The executioner's eyes flickered with a brief, almost imperceptible shift. "You sought knowledge beyond your means," it said coldly. "And now you will pay the price for your curiosity." Elliot's mind raced. There had to be another way. He couldn't accept this. Not now, not like this. He turned to Marcus, who stood at the edge of the platform, his face set with determination. "Marcus, there has to be something we can do. We can't just surrender." Marcus looked back, his expression unreadable. "We can't change the past. But maybe we can change the future." As the executioner's gaze fell upon him, Marcus stepped forward, raising his hands in an ancient gesture. A strange energy pulsed from him, and for a moment, the very fabric of reality seemed to warp. The executioner's eyes narrowed. "You dare challenge the order of existence?" Marcus's lips curled into a faint smile. "It's not about challenging you. It's about surviving." Chapter 13. The Hollow Call. The air was thick with tension, like a storm on the horizon waiting to strike. The streets of New York were eerily quiet, the kind of silence that only comes before something cataclysmic. News outlets had been broadcasting for days, covering the unsettling presence of the alien executioners. Their arrival had shaken humanity to its core. Governments scrambled to respond, but it was clear that they were outmatched, outclassed, and powerless in the face of the invaders. All around the world, the mysterious alien fleet hovered ominously above cities, their dark metallic shapes like harbingers of doom. Their demand was simple: surrender or face extinction. Dr. Evelyn Hawke sat in her small, dimly lit office at the University of Chicago. She stared at the holographic display in front of her, showing various articles and videos that explained what had happened over the past several days. She had been part of the global effort to understand the phenomenon, but like everyone else, she was running out of answers. "Where are they from? Why are they here?" she muttered to herself. Her fingers hovered over a particularly disturbing article, a report from the United Nations about a voice that had been heard, broadcasting across the world in an ancient language no one could decipher. It was the sound of death itself. Then the hologram flickered and a dark, warped shape appeared on the display, an unsettling figure with an inhuman presence. The image was distorted, its outline shifting and elongating in a way that suggested something incomprehensible. It was death, the figure that had been prophesied by the ancient texts. The voice emanated again, this time in a language Dr. Hawk recognized. It was the same ancient dialect from the Mayan codices, the one tied to their belief in the underworld and the end of times. Death has come. The reckoning is upon you. Her pulse quickened. The voice wasn't just a warning, it was a call. Chapter 14. Echoes of the Fallen. Captain Elias Trent was not used to fear. As a seasoned military leader, he had faced down terrorists, insurrections, and natural disasters with a steely resolve. But standing on the tarmac at the edge of a massive military base in Nevada, staring up at the alien ships that loomed overhead, he couldn't help but feel a sinking sensation in his stomach. These weren't just invaders. These were executioners. And they weren't interested in negotiations or compromise. A crackling sound interrupted his thoughts. His earpiece buzzed to life. "Captain, we have movement." "They're on the move," came the voice of Lieutenant Rojas, a young officer who had proven herself under pressure. He snapped to attention. "What's the status?" "They're coming down. The ground forces. They're not responding to our attempts at communication. The first wave is landing in the city as we speak." Elias felt his heart pound. They had prepared for this moment. Fortified positions, defense strategies, and a full arsenal of weaponry. But none of that would matter. He knew that. As the first alien warships descended slowly, their engines humming with unnatural power, the ground shook beneath him. The ships had no wings, no visible propulsion system, and yet they moved effortlessly as though they defied all known laws of physics. He could hear the metallic groan of their landing gears as the first ship touched down with a thundering crash. "I have to go." "Stand by," Elias said, his voice steady but his mind racing. He motioned for his team to follow him as they sprinted towards the rendezvous point. The city was chaos. The usual skyline of towering glass and steel now appeared to be nothing more than a playground for something far beyond humanity's comprehension. It wasn't long before they saw them. The alien executioners, tall, shrouded figures draped in dark armor that absorbed the light around them, strode down from their ships. Their helmets gleamed with an eerie red glow, and their movements were deliberate, almost ritualistic. As the aliens approached the city's core, a strange, rhythmic hum vibrated the air. The signal from the alien fleet had begun. Elias could feel it, the weight of death itself pressing down on him as though the universe itself was holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable. He looked to the sky and saw a dark shape moving across the clouds, casting a shadow so vast that it seemed to swallow the sun. The voice once again echoed through the air, speaking the ancient language of death. "Judgment has arrived." Chapter 15. The Arrival of the Executioners. Setting: Earth nearing the brink of total collapse. Cities lie in ruins and the world is plunged into chaos. The alien executioners, beings of incomprehensible power, have arrived in their massive ships, their goal unclear yet undeniably lethal. They seek to fulfill their duty to deliver a cosmic judgment, but the Earth's inhabitants refuse to kneel without a fight. Plot summary. As the alien ships descend upon the Earth, they are met with a resistance unlike any the world has seen before. Military forces worldwide attempt to engage, but their weapons are useless against the advanced technology of the executioners. These aliens, cloaked in dark armor, carry out swift and merciless strikes, eradicating any human or force that stands in their way. However, something shifts as death itself, a sentient cosmic force, begins to take notice of the executioner's actions. The chapter delves into the complex motives of the alien executioners, who have been sent by an intergalactic council to collect those fated to die, including the remnants of humanity. Through their cold, logical eyes, the inhabitants of Earth are seen as insignificant beings, worthy only of termination. But there are hints of an ancient rivalry between the alien executioners and the forces of death, whose influence begins to creep onto the battlefield. Excerpt. The sky above the shattered city of New York flickered like a dying star. Among the ruins, humanity's last stand felt futile. The alien ships, silent monoliths of death, hovered ominously, blocking out the sun. Their colossal frames shimmered with dark energy, pulsating as though they were alive. The executioners had arrived. Their bodies, mechanical but organic in form, seemed to absorb the very light around them. In the distance, a military convoy approached the city's borders, desperate to mount a resistance. But their guns were little more than toys against the executioners. The sound of gunfire was drowned out by an eerie hum, as the alien beings opened their jaws in unison, releasing pulses of energy that vaporized anything in their path. Amidst the chaos, a single figure moved through the ruins: death. Not a person but an entity, an omnipresent force that walked between worlds. It felt the surge of life fading as the executioners unleashed their power. It was drawn to this moment, sensing the shift in the cosmic balance. The executioners may have been agents of judgment, but they had not accounted for the force that governed all endings. They had not accounted for death. Chapter 16. Death challenges the executioners. Setting: the heart of the global battlefield, now a wasteland of broken dreams and destruction. Cities are reduced to rubble. The atmosphere is thick with despair and the air smells of decay. Plot summary. As the alien executioners continue their systematic destruction of Earth, death itself intervenes. It manifests as a shadowy figure, wearing the guise of an ancient, robed figure, its eyes glowing with the weight of eternity. The world's last hope lies in this cosmic battle, as death challenges the executioners, questioning their right to annihilate humanity without understanding the meaning of life and death. The executioners are taken aback. They were programmed to follow the decree of their galactic council, yet the force of death presents a dilemma they were never prepared for. They do not comprehend this force, nor do they understand why it would intervene in their mission. As the two forces collide, reality itself begins to warp and the planet trembles. A philosophical struggle ensues as death challenges the executioners on the morality of their duty. It suggests that the universe is not a place of blind judgment, but one of balance, where life and death are both necessary for existence. The alien beings, unwavering in their duty, remain unmoved by death's words. But as the battle rages, the tide begins to turn. Death calls forth the souls of the fallen, summoning them into existence to tip the scales in favor of humanity. Excerpt. The battlefield grew quiet for a moment, as the alien executioners paused in their relentless assault. They turned as one, their eerie, silver eyes locking on the figure that had appeared before them. Death. A dark presence surrounded the figure, and the very air seemed to grow cold. The ground beneath it cracked, as though the earth itself recognized the arrival of something far greater than the executioners. One of them spoke in a voice that echoed like an abyss. "You are not part of the judgment. You have no place here." Death's voice was a whisper, a soft ancient murmur that seemed to reverberate through the very fabric of reality. "I am everywhere. I am the end of all things. You claim to deliver judgment, yet you do not understand the nature of your task." The executioner's leader stepped forward, its form towering and monstrous. "We are agents of the Galactic Council. We serve the greater order. Our mission is clear. But what is order without understanding?" Death's voice was laced with bitterness. "You believe in annihilation. You believe that ending lives restores balance. But you are wrong. You cannot balance the universe by destroying it. You cannot judge what you do not understand." The tension in the air thickened and the ground trembled. The alien executioners raised their weapons, but death did not flinch. Instead, it extended a hand, and the souls of the fallen, those who had perished under the alien onslaught, rose from the earth like specters, swirling around the cloaked figure.